What if I told you that the deepest wounds you carry, the ones tied to your father or your mother, aren't just old memories, but living shadows that still shape every choice you make today? Think about it. That sudden fear of being abandoned in a relationship, the constant craving for validation from your boss, or even that strange wave of anger that rises when someone ignores you. Are these reactions really about what's happening right now? Or are they echoes of a much older story, one that began before you even understood what was happening? Here's the truth. The father wound and the mother wound aren't only about your parents. They are about the shadow, the hidden, unspoken parts of you that formed when you were just a child, trying to survive love that felt conditional, inconsistent, or maybe absent. Picture a child holding a mirror. Every smile, every scolding, every moment of neglect or praise gets etched into that glass. Over time, the child learns, this is who I must be to be loved, and this is the part of me I must hide. That hidden part, that's the shadow. And here's the paradox. The very traits you buried are the ones that control you the most. You think you've outgrown them. You tell yourself childhood is behind you. But why does your heart still race when your partner uses the same tone your father once did? Why do your mother's old expectations still whisper in your mind, leaving you feeling not enough? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So what if the fate you're living, the repeating patterns in love, at work, even in your sense of worth, isn't fate at all? What if it's the shadow of your parents' imprint, still running the show? The father wound often shows up as doubt in your ability to succeed, to take up space, to trust your own authority. The mother wound often shows up as guilt, shame, or the subtle belief that your needs are a burden. And here's the twist. Whether you rebel against those wounds or try desperately to please them, you are still trapped inside their shadow. So how do you break free? Not by blaming your parents, not by pretending the pain isn't there, but by turning toward the shadow itself, the silent container of all those wounds. Because when you step into that hidden place, when you bring light there, you don't just heal the father wound or the mother wound. You reclaim what's been waiting for you all along, your voice, your strength, your capacity to love without fear. Stay with me until the end, because the final truth I'll share is the one Jung himself believed was the hardest to face. And yet, it's also the one that unlocks the deepest freedom. Let's start with something simple and real. You can't heal the father wound or the mother wound if you skip the shadow. The shadow is like the hidden basement of your psyche. And just like any basement, if you refuse to go down there, what's left behind eventually shapes the whole atmosphere of the house above. So what is shadow work? At its core, it's about facing the parts of yourself you've disowned, denied, or buried. Think of it as sitting down with the version of you shaped by the father wound the part that doubts its own strength, or the version shaped by the mother wound the part that feels guilty for having needs. Shadow work isn't about judgment, it's about recognition. Why does this matter so much now? In our modern lives? Because the world is louder, faster, and more distracting than ever. Scroll through social media, and you'll see endless reminders. Be confident. Love yourself. Forgive your parents. But what happens when you can't? What happens when, no matter how many affirmations you repeat, that old voice inside still whispers, "You're not enough"? That's when you realize you can't bypass the shadow. You can't heal a wound by pretending it isn't bleeding. Here's an image to hold on to. Imagine trying to build a skyscraper on a cracked foundation. No matter how tall, how shiny, how impressive it looks, those cracks underneath will decide its fate. It's the same with your wounds. Your career, your relationships, your sense of self, they all rest on the foundation of your father wound and mother wound. Ignore them, and the cracks keep widening. Face them, and you finally build something that lasts. There's another reason shadow work is essential in our time: comparison. Maybe you scroll through Instagram and see glowing couples, perfect families, entrepreneurs, living the dream. Something in you tightens and asks, "Why not me? What's wrong with me?" That voice isn't random. That's the shadow speaking. Every pang of envy, every rush of insecurity, every moment of self-doubt is the shadow knocking. Here I am. Pay attention. Think about the moments you've overreacted. A friend cancels plans and you spiral into, "They don't really care about me." Your boss gives feedback and you hear, "I'll never be good enough." These reactions aren't really about the present. They're about the old wounds beneath the surface wounds that began in your earliest relationships. Jung taught that the shadow isn't evil. It's not something to destroy. It's simply the part of you that got locked away because it didn't feel safe to be seen. And when those parts stay locked, you end up living half a life. On the outside, you succeed. On the inside, you feel empty. You love others, but struggle to feel loved yourself. This is why shadow work matters. It's not homework for psychology nerds. It's the key to living fully. It allows you to stop replaying your parents' voices and finally hear your own. It gives you freedom from old scripts, space to write your own story. And here's the hopeful part. You don't need to be a therapist or a scholar to do shadow work. You just need curiosity, honesty, and the courage to sit with what's uncomfortable. It's not about digging endlessly into the past. It's about noticing how the past is still alive in the present and then choosing differently. In the next part, I'll tell you a symbolic story that shows how the shadow hides and how you can catch it before it runs your life. Because once you see it in a story, you'll start seeing it in yourself. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a child living in a bright village where the sun seemed to shine every single day. This child laughed freely, sang without fear, and ran barefoot through open fields. But the village had rules. The father, a man of stern authority, would say, "Be strong, don't cry, don't show weakness." The mother, carrying her own burdens, would say, "Be good, don't be too loud, don't need too much." So the child learned. Each time tears came, they swallowed them. Each time joy burst out too big, they dimmed it down. Little by little, they placed pieces of themselves into a locked chest they kept hidden deep in the forest. At first, the chest was small, but with each passing year, it grew heavier. The child carried it everywhere, even into adulthood. That chest is the shadow. And the story isn't just about a child in some faraway village. It's about you, about me, about anyone who learned too soon that love had conditions. Now let's bring it closer. Picture Sarah. On the outside, she looks successful, respected in her career, admired by colleagues. But one small piece of criticism from her boss, and she feels like she's collapsing inside. Why? Because her father's voice still echoes, "Nothing you do is ever enough." That wound plays out in every authority figure she meets. Then there's Mark. He's known as the nicest guy. Generous, always putting others first. But inside he's exhausted. He never says no. Why? Because, as a child, he felt guilty every time he disappointed his mother. His shadow whispers, "Your needs don't matter. If you take up space, you'll lose love." The chest in the forest, the hidden weight. It's not just a fairy tale image. It's the living metaphor of the wounds we carry. And here's the haunting part. The more we try to forget the chest, the heavier it feels. Denial doesn't erase the shadow. It feeds it. Pretending the wound isn't there doesn't free us. It ties us tighter to the old pattern. Think of it like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can push it down for a while, but sooner or later it pops back up, often at the worst possible moment. The angry outburst that came out of nowhere, the panic attack before a big meeting, the deep loneliness you feel, even in a crowded room. That's the beach ball. That's the shadow you thought you buried. But here's the hopeful turn. Once you start opening the chest even just a little, you find treasures hidden alongside the pain. Sarah discovers that behind her fear of criticism is a deep drive for mastery. Mark learns that beneath his guilt lies an incredible capacity for empathy, once he balances it with boundaries. The shadow is never only darkness. It always holds light you couldn't see before. The very traits that once felt dangerous, anger, sensitivity, vulnerability, hold the keys to your wholeness. So let me ask you, are you willing to meet what's inside your own chest? Are you ready to stop running and start listening? In the next part, we'll get practical. You'll hear the first 3 signs that your father or mother wound is alive in your shadow right now. And some of them might surprise you because they often hide in plain sight. Let's bring this closer to daily life. How can you tell if the father wound or the mother wound is still alive inside your shadow? Sometimes it's obvious. You hear your parent's voice echoing in your head. But most of the time, it shows up in subtle ways, so woven into your habits that you don't even notice. Here are the first 3 signs. Overreaction to authority. Think back to the last time someone in authority corrected you, maybe your boss, a teacher, or even a stranger. Did you feel a sudden rush of anxiety? Maybe shame, like you'd just been caught doing something wrong? This is the father wound echoing through the shadow. As a child, you may have learned that authority meant judgment, that no matter what you did, it would never be enough. So now, even the smallest feedback feels like a verdict on your worth. The next time that rush hits, pause. Ask yourself, is this really about my boss right now, or is it about my father's voice still echoing inside me? Just naming the difference loosens the grip. Guilt for having needs. How often do you say yes when you mean no, or apologize for asking for something simple: help, rest, even affection? This is the mother wound speaking through the shadow. You may have learned that your needs were a burden. That love was safest when you made yourself small, agreeable, selfless. But here's the paradox. The more you silence your needs, the more resentment builds. That's why people who seem endlessly giving sometimes erupt in anger or collapse in burnout. Try this. Each night, write down one small need you honored that day. A glass of water, a 10-minute break, a moment to yourself. Tiny acts like this rebuild the inner permission to exist fully without guilt. Repeating the same relationship patterns. Have you noticed how you keep attracting the same type of partner? Maybe distant, maybe controlling, maybe emotionally unavailable. You tell yourself, this time will be different. But somehow the same story repeats. That's the shadow at work. Deep down, the child inside you is trying to rewrite the old script with your father or your mother. You keep choosing partners who carry the same traits, hoping unconsciously that this time you'll finally win the love you couldn't secure before. But the shadow doesn't heal by repeating, it heals by revealing. Instead of asking, why do I always attract the wrong people? Ask, what wound is this person mirroring back to me? Then write, what did I need from my father or mother that I'm still chasing in this partner? These 3 signs: overreacting to authority, feeling guilty for having needs, and repeating relationship patterns are like footprints of the shadow. They show you exactly where the father wound and mother wound are still alive. And here's the thing, once you see them, you can't unsee them. That awareness is the first slice of light cutting into the shadow. In the next part, we'll go further. I'll share the next 3 signs, subtle habits that often look normal on the surface, but quietly drain your energy from within. We've uncovered the first 3 signs of how the father wound and mother wound still live inside your shadow. But the shadow doesn't always show itself through obvious pain. Sometimes it hides inside habits that look normal, even admirable. That's why these next 3 signs are so easy to miss. The endless drive to prove yourself. Do you push yourself harder and harder, no matter how much you've already achieved? Maybe you've collected promotions, degrees, recognition, but it never feels like enough. There's always another mountain to climb, another person to impress. This drive often grows out of the father wound. Deep down, the child in you is still chasing a nod of approval, hoping to finally hear, you made it. But the shadow twists that hunger into a treadmill. Run faster, achieve more, never rest. The drive itself isn't bad. It's a strength. But when fueled by the shadow, it becomes a cage. Ask yourself, if no one were watching, would I still want this goal? Or am I still performing for an invisible father? That one question can turn compulsion into choice. Trouble with boundaries. Do you say yes too easily? Or on the other extreme, do you keep walls so high that no one can truly reach you? Both patterns trace back to the mother wound. If love once felt conditional, if you had to overgive to keep it, or shut down to protect yourself, the shadow keeps that survival strategy alive. You might become the helper who burns out, or the loner who avoids intimacy. Either way, your boundaries aren't flowing. They're frozen in the shape of an old wound. Next time someone asks something of you, pause before answering. Take a breath. Ask, Am I saying yes out of fear of losing love, or because I truly want to? That tiny pause is the beginning of rewiring the shadow's grip. Perfectionism and harsh self-criticism. Do you hear an inner voice that never rests? The one that says, "You could have done better, you should have known, you're still not enough." That's the shadow echoing both father and mother wounds. Maybe you were praised only when you excelled, or corrected harshly when you failed. The child inside learned, if I'm flawless, I'll be safe. If I make mistakes, I'll be unlovable. But perfectionism is a prison. It stops you from starting projects, taking risks, even enjoying your own victories. Because no matter how high you climb, the shadow raises the bar higher. Here's a simple practice. Write down one mistake you made today. Then write one thing that mistake taught you. Over time, this turns failure from shame into growth. These 3 signs: the drive to prove yourself, the struggle with boundaries, and perfectionism, are the shadow in disguise. On the outside, people may admire you for being hardworking, generous, meticulous, but you know the cost. Awareness here isn't about blaming your parents. It's about recognizing these behaviors for what they are. Survival strategies built in childhood. Once you see them clearly, you're free to choose differently. In the next part, we'll dive into even deeper signs, ones so hidden you might mistake them for your personality. But they're actually the shadow's cleverest disguises. The first 6 signs may already feel familiar, but the shadow is clever. It doesn't just show up in obvious wounds or in habits you can clearly name. Sometimes it hides so deeply that you mistake it for your true personality. Let's explore 3 of the most hidden signs. Fear of intimacy, even when you crave it. Have you ever noticed how much you long for closeness, yet feel the urge to pull away the moment someone gets too close? Maybe a relationship begins with excitement, but as soon as it deepens, you feel trapped. Or maybe you keep choosing partners who stay emotionally unavailable, because, on some level, that feels safer. This fear often traces back to the mother wound. If love once felt unpredictable, warm one moment, cold the next, the shadow may have recorded intimacy as dangerous. The child inside you learned, if I get too close, I'll be hurt. Here's a gentle step. Notice your push-pull pattern. Journal about the moments you pulled away. Not to shame yourself, but to ask, what younger part of me was trying to stay safe just then? Meeting that younger self with compassion softens the shadow's grip. Anger that feels out of proportion. Do you sometimes explode over something small? Someone cuts you off in traffic, and rage floods your whole body. Your partner forgets something minor, and it feels like betrayal. This isn't just about having a short temper. It's the shadow speaking. Anger is often the voice of the father wound the protest of a child who never felt seen, respected, or protected. When ignored, that anger simmers underground until the shadow finds the smallest spark to set it off. Next time anger rises, instead of asking, "Why am I so mad?" try, "What part of me feels unseen right now?" That shift turns anger from an explosion into an exploration. Numbness or emotional disconnection. This is perhaps the most hidden sign of all. Some people don't explode, they go numb. They say, "I don't really feel much." They keep conversations light, avoid vulnerability, and bury themselves in work, screens, or endless busyness. But numbness isn't the absence of feeling. It's the shadow's way of protecting you from emotions that once felt overwhelming. If you grew up in a home where feelings were dismissed or unsafe, the child inside learned, better to shut down than risk getting hurt. The practice here is slow and kind. Start by noticing tiny flickers of feeling a touch of sadness in a movie, a moment of joy in music. Write them down. Celebrate them. Bit by bit, this reawakens the parts of you the shadow froze long ago. These hidden signs, fear of intimacy, explosive anger, and emotional numbness, are the shadow's deepest disguises. They don't look like wounds. They look like just the way I am. But the truth is, they're survival patterns born from the father wound and mother wound, still alive in you today. The good news is this: if they're patterns, they can change. The shadow isn't your destiny. It's a map, showing you exactly where light is needed most. In the next part, we'll move from recognition into practice. I'll share journaling prompts and simple daily exercises that turn awareness into real healing step by step, word by word. Awareness is the first step. By now, you've seen how the shadow shows itself through patterns, reactions, and hidden behaviors. But awareness alone fades unless you bring it into practice. Healing requires action, even small and quiet ones. This is where journaling and daily exercises become powerful allies. The shadow dialogue. Open your journal. At the top of the page write, "The part of me that still fears my father's voice says." Then let the words spill out. No editing, no censoring. Just let that hidden voice speak. When it feels complete, write, "And the part of me that longs to be free says." Then let that voice respond. This is not about erasing the shadow, it's about giving it room to exist. When those hidden parts are finally heard, their grip loosens. The mirror of needs. Each evening, reflect on this question. What need did I silence today? Maybe you were hungry but told yourself to wait. Maybe you wanted to rest but kept going. Write it down. Then add, what would it have looked like to honor that need, even in a small way? Over time, this practice reminds you that your needs are valid, that caring for yourself doesn't take love away from others. Triggers as teachers. Think of the last time you felt an emotional reaction that seemed bigger than the moment. Jealousy, rage, despair. In your journal, describe what happened. Then ask, what younger version of me showed up just then? How old did I feel in that moment? By linking a trigger to an age, you reconnect with the child who still carries that wound. Instead of shaming yourself for overreacting, you realize, that was my younger self, still hoping to be seen. Reclaiming the lost traits. The shadow doesn't only hold pain, it holds gifts, parts of you that were criticized or silenced. Anger might hide power. Sensitivity might hide intuition. Silence might hide creativity. On one page, write, traits I was criticized for as a child. On the next, write, the gift inside each trait. For example, too sensitive, empathy. Too stubborn, persistence. Too loud, self-expression. This reframes the shadow, turning it from enemy to ally. Daily anchors. The pause. Whenever guilt, shame, or anger rises, pause. Take one breath. Whisper to yourself, this is a shadow echo. I have a choice now. The mirror. Each morning, look into your own eyes for 30 seconds. Say softly, I see you. I'm here with you. It may feel strange at first, but it builds self-connection over time. The permission slip. Each day, write one sentence. Today, I give myself permission to rest. Speak up. Feel. Keep it with you. These practices aren't quick fixes. They're acts of reparenting, giving yourself now what you didn't receive then. Every journal page, every pause, every small permission is a stitch in the fabric of healing. And here's the paradox. The more you practice, the less you feel like you're fixing yourself. Instead, you realize you were never broken. You were only carrying wounds that needed light. In the next part, we'll step into the tender ground of love and relationships. Because nothing brings the shadow to the surface more than intimacy. If there's one place the father wound and mother wound reveal themselves most clearly, it's in love. Relationships act like mirrors. They don't just show you who you are now, they awaken the parts of you you've tried to hide. That's why intimacy can feel so magical, and at the same time, so terrifying. In the beginning of a relationship, you often feel whole, alive, even healed. Why? Because your partner reflects back what you were starved of in childhood. Maybe they offer the attention your father withheld. Maybe they give the warmth your mother couldn't provide. It feels intoxicating, like the missing piece has finally arrived. But sooner or later, the glow fades. Little conflicts appear, and suddenly the shadow steps in. A forgotten text feels like abandonment. A careless word feels like betrayal. And you wonder, why does this hurt so much? Why am I so sensitive? Here's the truth. It's not only about your partner, it's about the wound beneath. The shadow uses relationships to replay the old script. If your father was distant, you may be drawn to distant partners. If your mother was critical, You may unconsciously choose partners who echo that same judgment. It's not sabotage, it's the shadow trying once again to rewrite the story. Take Sarah, for example. She kept falling for men who were emotionally unavailable. Each time she thought, if I can get him to open up, I'll finally prove I'm lovable. But really, it was her shadow chasing her father's attention. Mark, on the other hand, often ended up with controlling partners. Deep inside, he doubted his ability to make good choices on his own, a belief seated in childhood. The shadow kept pulling him toward people who reinforced that script. So, how do you shift this? First, awareness. When conflict arises, pause and ask, what old wound is being touched right now? Second, communication. Share vulnerably, not as blame. You might say, when you cancel plans, I feel a fear that traces back to childhood. It's not really about you, it's about me learning to trust. That kind of honesty turns conflict into connection. Third, self-parenting. No partner can fully heal the father or mother wound for you. They can support you, but the deeper work is yours. Every time you honor a need, express a feeling, or set a boundary, you are reparenting yourself in real time. And let's be clear, shadow work in relationships isn't about perfection. You'll still get triggered, you'll still project. So will your partner. That's part of being human. The difference is, when you understand the shadow, you stop treating every trigger as an emergency. You start treating it as a doorway. Love becomes less about fixing each other and more about holding space for the wounded child in each other, and that shift, that tenderness, is what makes love feel safe again. So ask yourself, what patterns keep showing up in your relationships? What do they reveal about your father wound, your mother wound, your shadow? And more importantly, what would it feel like to bring those hidden parts into the light right here, right now? In the next part, we'll move from the personal to the social. Because the shadow doesn't just shape your love life, it follows you into work, friendships, and the wider world. The shadow doesn't just appear in love. It follows you into the office, the classroom, the dinner table, and even into the hours you spend scrolling on your phone. Wherever people gather, the father wound and mother wound leave their marks. Think about work. How many times have you stayed late, not because it was required, but because an inner voice whispered, if you don't prove yourself, you'll be forgotten. That's the father wound fueling ambition. Or maybe you've taken on tasks that weren't yours because saying no felt impossible. That's the mother wound shaping your boundaries. Even in moments of success, the shadow speaks. You land the promotion, get the raise, win the recognition, but instead of joy, you feel an emptiness. Why? Because external wins can't heal internal wounds. The applause fades, but the old voice still lingers. Not enough. Now think about friendships. Maybe you're the reliable one, the friend everyone calls when they need something. You say yes, even when you're exhausted. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that love comes from being useful, not from simply being yourself. That's the mother wound, alive in the shadow. Or maybe you play the opposite role. You keep people at a distance. Conversations stay on the surface. You leave before anyone can get too close. Why? Because intimacy once felt unsafe. That's the father wound, showing up as self-protection. And then there's social media, the place where shadows perform loudly. You scroll through curated images of perfect families, dream careers, glamorous lives. Something in you tightens envy, shame, maybe despair. But those reactions aren't really about the people on the screen. They're about your shadow. When envy rises, it's pointing to a part of you you've disowned. Seeing someone speak boldly might sting because your own voice was silenced as a child. Watching someone rest and enjoy life might irritate you because your own needs for rest were dismissed. Envy isn't proof that you're flawed. It's proof that the shadow is calling. So, what can you do with all this? Start small. The next time you feel triggered at work, with friends, or while scrolling, pause and ask, whose voice is this? Is it really mine? Or is it my father's, my mother's, my shadow's? Just that moment of awareness shifts the balance. Here's a practical tool. Keep a shadow log. Each time you feel a strong emotional reaction, Write down the trigger, the feeling, and the memory it connects to. Over time, patterns appear. You begin to see clearly. This isn't just about my coworker or that Instagram post. This is my old wound resurfacing. Work and social life aren't separate from shadow work. They are the stage where your unconscious scripts play out most visibly, but they can also become your practice ground. Every meeting, every friendship, every scroll becomes a chance to notice, to pause, to choose differently. In the next part, we'll explore a subtler trap, the way spirituality itself can be hijacked by the shadow. Because even the pursuit of light can become another way to avoid the dark. Shadow work is powerful. But even here, the shadow can disguise itself. One of the most common places this happens is in spirituality. What looks like light can quietly become another way of avoiding darkness. This is what Jungians and many modern teachers call spiritual bypassing. What does that look like? Imagine someone saying, "Everything happens for a reason," while pushing their grief aside, or "just stay positive," while burying their anger. On the surface, these words sound uplifting, but underneath, they can serve as shields to avoid the shadow. The father wound and the mother wound both slip easily into this bypass. If a father taught you to be tough and dismiss your feelings, you might use spiritual ideas as armor. "I don't get angry, I just send love." If a mother modeled guilt or self-sacrifice, you might use spirituality to erase yourself. "I don't have needs, I only serve." The practices themselves, prayer, meditation, affirmations, rituals, aren't the problem. The problem is why you're using them. Are they helping you integrate your shadow, or are they helping you hide from it? Here are some common traps where the shadow sneaks in. Positivity addiction, forcing cheerfulness while ignoring pain. Over-identification with light, believing you're above anger, jealousy, or desire. Escaping through practices. Meditating, fasting, or chanting. Not to connect deeper, but to numb feelings. Projecting onto gurus, giving away your power to a teacher instead of trusting your own voice. Do you recognize any of these? If so, don't judge yourself. The shadow thrives in shame. The goal isn't to condemn your practices, but to meet them with honesty. Here's a simple test. After a spiritual practice, do you feel more whole or more split? Do you feel more human or less human? True healing grounds you in your body. It makes you more present, not less. If meditation helps you cry tears you've been holding back, that's integration. If prayer gives you strength to face conflict instead of avoiding it, that's growth. The shadow doesn't vanish just because you repeat affirmations or imagine light. It waits. The only way through is honesty. Carl Jung warned against identifying too much with the light. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." So how do you shift this? Bring your shadow into your spiritual life. During meditation, don't push thoughts away. Ask them, "What are you showing me?" During prayer, name the wound. "I still feel unworthy of love." During journaling, write not just what inspires you, but also what scares you. This transforms spirituality from escape into medicine. Your practices stop being armor and become tools of integration. And here's the paradox. When your spirituality includes the shadow, your light becomes real. It's no longer a mask. It's grounded. It holds both joy and sorrow, both love and anger, both peace and pain. So let me ask you, have you been using light to hide from your darkness? And what might shift if you brought both your wounds and your wisdom into the same space? In the next part, we'll move deeper into Jung's philosophy. We'll explore the idea of the collective shadow, how wounds don't just live in individuals but in entire societies, and why healing your personal shadow matters for the world. Up to now, we've talked about the shadow as something personal, your wounds, your parents, your inner child. But Carl Jung also spoke of something larger, the collective shadow. And once you see it, you realize that your father wound and mother wound aren't just private struggles. They're part of a bigger story stretching across families, generations, even entire cultures. Think about it. If a father carries unhealed pain from his own father, he may pass it down as harshness, distance, or silence. If a mother carries unhealed pain from her own mother, she may pass it down as guilt, control, or absence. These wounds ripple through generations. This is what we now call generational trauma. And it doesn't stop with families. Whole societies carry shadows. Nations built on conquest carry shadows of violence. Communities that silence women carry shadows of repression. Cultures that avoid grief carry shadows of numbness. These collective wounds shape politics, workplaces, and even the stories we tell in movies and media. Jung believed that when one person does shadow work, they don't just heal themselves, they lighten the collective shadow, because the unconscious doesn't end at the border of your skin. It connects us all. Look around, and you can see the collective shadow everywhere. In the way people project anger onto the other, another race, religion, or political group. In the way society glorifies overwork, echoing the father wound's message, your worth is in your performance. In the way communities shame vulnerability, echoing the mother wound's whisper, your needs are too much. And just like with the personal shadow, whatever we refuse to face collectively becomes more dangerous. When a society denies its racism, sexism, or violence, those forces grow stronger underground. Jung warned that the collective shadow, left unchecked, can erupt in destructive ways: wars, oppression, collapse. So what does this mean for you, listening right now? It means your healing is not selfish. Every time you face your shadow, you interrupt the cycle. You become one less person passing the wound forward. You shift the atmosphere in your family, your workplace, your community. Picture it this way. Imagine a chain being passed down through generations. Each link carries shame, silence, rejection. Shadow work is when you finally grab that chain and say, "It stops here." Maybe you can't heal every link, but by facing your part, you keep it from tightening around the next generation. And here's the paradox. By confronting your own darkness, you actually add light to the collective. Think of activists who turn personal pain into movements for justice. Artists who transform their shadows into stories that awaken millions. Parents who raise children with the tenderness they never received. Jung once said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." Without shadow work, the world tells you, be small, be silent, be perfect. With shadow work, you answer for yourself. I am whole, I am human, I am free. So your father wound and mother wound are not just about you. They're threads in a much larger fabric, and when you weave them into light, you help repair the whole. In the final part, we'll bring everything together. I'll share what it truly means to walk with your shadow, not as an enemy to fight, but as an ally leading you toward freedom, wholeness, and love. We've walked a long road together through the father wound, the mother wound, and deep into the shadow. And along the way, one truth has become clear. The wounds of childhood don't stay in childhood. They live on in your relationships, in your work, in your spirituality, even in the culture around you. But here's the key. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your guide. It shows you exactly where the light is needed most. Every fear, every trigger, every old voice you hear inside isn't proof that you're broken. It's an invitation to remember your wholeness. Take a moment and think back. Which sign resonated most with you? Was it the overreaction to authority, the guilt for having needs, the repeating relationship patterns, or maybe the hidden signs: fear of intimacy, sudden anger, emotional numbness? Whatever stirred inside you, that's the shadow whispering, start here. And remember, healing doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in small, steady steps. A page in your journal, a pause before saying yes, a boundary spoken with shaky courage, a single tear you finally allow yourself to cry. These aren't small things, they're revolutions. You might wonder, what if it's too late for me? What if I've lived too long with these wounds? Let me tell you, your shadow never expires. The parts of you you buried are still there, still alive, still waiting for you to return. Healing isn't about going back. It's about moving forward with all of yourself, not just half. And here's the paradox. When you face your shadow, life doesn't grow darker. It grows brighter. Because you stop wasting energy hiding. You stop living out old scripts. You begin to show up as who you were always meant to be: whole, authentic, unafraid of your own depth. So, I'll leave you with this. Healing the father wound and the mother wound doesn't begin with fixing them. It begins with facing the shadow inside you. And when you do, you don't just heal the past, you transform the future. If this journey stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Keep exploring, keep journaling, keep listening for the places where your shadow calls. And if these words resonated, share them. Speak your reflections. Stay connected. Because this is not just content, it's a journey we're walking together. You are not alone. You never were. The shadow you fear is also the shadow that carries your voice, your power, your light. And it's waiting right now for you to come home.